Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. When we usually think about education, we tend to focus on things like personal growth or societal advancement. But today we're going to look at it through a very different, highly focused lens. We really need to reframe education, specifically for profit educational institutions, as profit-seeking businesses that face uniquely complex sustainability risks. To understand how to actually measure the true viability of these institutions, we are going to explore the widely respected SASB standards framework.
Okay, let's dive into this. On our agenda today, we'll start with 1, the business of education. Then 2, overview, the 3 pillars. After that, we'll break down 3, Pillar 1, data security, 4, Pillar 2, educational quality, and 5, Pillar 3, marketing practices. Finally, we'll wrap up with 6, the investor's bottom line.
Section 1. The business of education. Assessing risk and viability.
For you, ESG investors and financial analysts tuning in, just looking at a school's balance sheet really only tells half the story. Think about it. Profit-seeking institutions generate their primary revenue from student fees. But to keep those fees rolling in, these schools face massive, often completely hidden operational risks. That's exactly why frameworks like the SASB and the SASB standards matter so much to investors. Sustainability-related risks directly affect cash flows, access to finance, and the cost of capital over the short, medium, and long term. The SASB standards are designed to pinpoint exactly which non-financial metrics dictate true, long-term financial health. If an institution isn't managing its sustainability risks, its bottom line is incredibly fragile.
Moving right along to Section 2. Overview, the 3 pillars, the SASB framework.
To evaluate this sector properly, the SASB standard is built upon 3 critical disclosure topics. First up is data security, which focuses on protecting sensitive student records and infrastructure. Second is the quality of education and gainful employment, which is all about ensuring students actually graduate and secure relevant jobs. And third, we have marketing and recruiting practices, focusing on ethical student acquisition and transparent disclosures. These 3 specific areas are the true barometers of institutional longevity and investor evaluation. We're going to be looking at these seemingly non-financial metrics as foundational, weight-bearing pillars that literally hold up the entire financial structure of an educational institution. If just one of these pillars collapses, the institution's entire financial stability goes down with it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the standard organizes these 3 core topics into strict reportable metrics. It breaks down each topic into distinct quantitative and qualitative categories. We aren't just talking about vague promises here. We're talking about hard, trackable data. Things like percentages, financial impacts, and explicit policy descriptions. This is how you translate everyday educational operations into actionable data for the market.
Section 3. Pillar 1, data security. The ultimate test of operational trust.
You might not immediately think of a college campus as a digital fortress, but data security is a massive vulnerability for this sector. The source material spells it out perfectly. Colleges and universities are frequent and compelling targets for cybercriminals. Just think about the sheer volume of national identification numbers, financial aid details, and health records stored in these open, highly collaborative campus environments. If that sensitive information is exposed, it results in severe social externalities, like identity fraud. When a school compromises that operational trust, it suffers immense reputational damage, and that directly leads to lost enrollment and lost revenue.
So, what exactly are we measuring here? Well, the standard clearly defines a personal data breach as an accidental or unauthorized destruction, loss, alteration, or disclosure of personal data. And what's fascinating is how remarkably strict this definition is. It even includes incidents where encrypted data is acquired right alongside the encryption key, or if there's just a reasonable belief the encrypted data could be easily converted back to plain text. A breach is a breach, and there is absolutely nowhere to hide it under these standards.
To monitor this, schools must report exact quantitative metrics. They literally have to disclose the total number of data breaches, what percentage of those were personal data breaches, and crucially, the total number of unique students affected. Plus, they have to detail the corrective actions they implemented in response. Investors absolutely need this level of detail to evaluate whether management's cybersecurity strategies are actually effective or if they're just building a house of cards.
Section 4, Pillar 2, Educational Quality, the Product ROI.
If we treat education as a business, then the quality of that education is the fundamental product. And this brings us to a critical question when measuring that return on investment. Do students actually get the jobs they trained for, or do they just graduate with unmanageable debt? We are seeing rapid growth in student debt right now, and that creates massive economic and social externalities. If students are graduating with high debt and very few skills valued by employers, they're going to default on those loans. And if default rates spike, that threatens the school's eligibility for essential government funding streams.
To prove this educational ROI, the SASB framework uses a step-by-step metric system. Step 1 is the graduation rate, specifically calculated as students who receive their award within 150% of normal time. So, for example, taking up to 6 years for a 4-year degree. Step 2 tightens the lens to the on-time completion rate, which is exactly 100% of normal time. And Step 3, this is the big one, the job placement rate. This isn't just about getting any job. It tracks whether graduates obtain gainful employment in their trained occupation within 180 days of receiving their credential, and whether they retain that employment for at least 13 weeks.
So the crucial point is that entities that perform poorly on accountability metrics may jeopardize important governmental funding sources. Educational quality isn't just a moral imperative, folks. It is a financial lifeline. Poor student outcomes directly translate to the loss of vital funding and ultimately institutional failure.
Section 5, Pillar 3, Marketing Practices, Ethical Student Acquisition.
In the business world, you'd just call this customer acquisition. Because revenue relies almost entirely on enrollment volume, schools face massive regulatory scrutiny regarding exactly how they attract those students. Using false or misleading advertisements to recruit prospective students can result in significant fines and, once again, the devastating loss of eligibility for government-funded student loans. There's a massive reputational and financial risk if schools mislead students into taking out expensive private loans they literally have no hope of repaying. And this brilliantly illustrates the tension at the heart of for-profit education. Under metric SVED 270A.3, schools must disclose a direct comparison: their instruction and student services expenses versus their marketing and recruiting expenses. Are they actually paying for faculty, textbooks, and career services? Or are they just pouring cash into recruiter salaries and advertising? This single metric forces investors to ask, is this school spending its money actually educating students, or just trying to get them in the door?
To keep schools honest, the standard requires some heavy-hitting mandatory disclosures. Schools must describe their policies for disclosing key performance statistics to prospective students before they collect a single fee. They must openly report any monetary losses from legal proceedings tied to deceptive marketing, and they have to reveal their exact mix of revenue from government-funded aid versus private student loans. Tracking these legal losses and loan types deeply exposes a school's true underlying financial risk profile.
Which brings us to Section 6, the investor's bottom line, looking beyond the balance sheet. So, we've explored data security, educational quality, and marketing practices. What we've seen is how these seemingly non-financial metrics are actually the foundational bedrock of a for-profit school's financial viability. Make no mistake, a failure in any of these 3 pillars signals an imminent financial and regulatory collapse. That is exactly why the SASB standards provide the definitive framework for evaluating education sustainability. By holding institutions accountable to these specific metrics, we can look past the glossy marketing brochures and see the true health of the business. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question. If an institution prioritizes aggressive recruiting to inflate its numbers but completely neglects actual educational outcomes and the security of its students' data, is its financial model truly sustainable?